What's happening? Hello, my fine people at WCReplays.com. This is Speierg coming at you with another audio commentary. In fact, I've got not just one, not 3, not 19, but 2. That's right, 2 games for you today. And we're going to be taking a look at the human versus undead matchup from the human perspective. So let's get this first game paused at the 1 minute mark, and we'll jump right into it here in a minute. The first game is the one between Shobu and Saturn. So while you're getting that queued up, let me say that this is, of course, copyrighted by WC Replays 2006. So don't do anything that would be considered evil. We wouldn't want to do that now, would we? Anywho, hope you guys are doing well. I'm excited to bring you guys a couple of games here. Got some good stuff for you. And I want to talk for a second at the outset about this human-undead matchup. As a human player, I'll tell you right off the bat, undead is by far my worst matchup. Hate it. Every time the load screen says it's an undead player, I just start getting ticked. It just, just like someone just jabbed me in the ear with a rather sharp fork or something. Drives me crazy, but, it's a matchup you're going to have to learn how to play if you're human. And it's funny because some undead players will say that human is their hardest matchup. So I'm not exactly sure how that works. But, I guess it just depends on the way that you play the game and the style that you like to use or whatever. It can either be difficult or easy for you. So anyhow, we're going to look at a couple of different ways that people have beaten undead somewhat consistently. And we're going to look at 2 different approaches, both of which I think are somewhat valid. And both of them are going to be Archmage first, in case you're hoping for some kind of a cool Mountain King or Paladin first strategy. I'm not really going to look at anything like that right now. This is going to be a little bit more mainstream. And what you need to realize about this matchup, I think, first and foremost, if you don't already know this, and keep in mind, I'm trying to keep this at a level where if you're completely new to this game, it won't be over your head. You will learn stuff. If you're a really fantastic player already, I'm going to say some stuff that you already know, and you'll just have to be okay with that. So, anyway, in this battle, as a human, you really have to look at this as a war of, I guess you would call it economy, or maybe you would want to call it macro. Economy is really part of macro. But if you can win the economic battle, it gives you a chance. If you don't do that, if your undead opponent is able to out-expand you and you don't get an expansion, for example, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. I really think that is the case. And I'm sure you guys can, if you look hard enough, you can find some examples of games where human players have won without an expansion. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying that, by and large, that seems to be a safer strategy to try and get an expansion. And so we're going to take a look here at a couple of different games where players get that expansion, use it to their advantage to get a win. So without further ado, let's get this thing unpaused because we are going to be in for a nice long ride in this audio, my friends. Hopefully my voice will not wear out and my mind won't start to freak out because it is pretty late as I begin to record this. So bear with me if I start to say some crazy stuff. All right, here we go. Unpausing in 3, 2, 1, unpause. All right, let me turn my volume down here so that's not driving us crazy. All right, right out of the gate, you're going to notice pretty standard build order from both players. And one of the things that you have to learn to do as a human player, you have to learn how to scout well. And that's true in any matchup. Against the undead, what you want to be able to do is just understand that when you see the undead's base, you need to be able to take a very quick look at it and figure out if he's going fiends or ghouls. Because that can kind of change the complexion of things. We're going to look at 2 games here that both feature an undead player using basically a ghoul build. And I think against human, I think ghoul approach is probably still a little bit more common. I feel like I see that a little bit more often. And quite honestly, I prefer to see a fiend build. I seem to have a little bit more success against fiends than I do against a player who's pretty decent with ghouls. So we're going to take a look at a couple of games that feature a ghoul build, and here we go. The Archmage is going to pop out, and he's going to start creeping with a couple of footmen, and the Death Knight is going to pop out, he's going to get his Rod of Necromancy, and he's going to try to harass. Big surprise, right? I mean, this is pretty much the way you would expect this matchup to unfold. So, hopefully you guys already know some of the basics. When you are creeping and there is a Death Knight nearby, know that level 1 coil does 100 damage. So, if the Death Knight is lurking really close by and you think he's going to try and coil a creep and try to kill it, then try to leave it above 100 HP to make sure he doesn't get that kill. And you could see really a little bit of what Saturn was doing there, kind of bringing that ghoul in and out, just trying to distract him and slow his creeping down enough to where maybe he could get that Death Knight there in time to steal something. Didn't work out for him, but it was a good idea. And so that's what you may see one of your opponents doing, kind of trying to bait you with one of those ghouls. Hey, come chase my ghoul. And if he can get you to do that, it slows your creeping down a little bit. You're not going to kill that ghoul, I can promise you. Not if you want Archmage first. So there's really not much point in trying to go after it. So you want to creep, and you'll notice here, this really close, he actually coiled that Knoll a little bit too early, so he did not get any experience from that. So that's kind of how you do it. You'll leave him at like 120 HP if you can do that, and then the coil comes in. If you're lucky, you let the coil go off, and then you can still get that kill. So that's what you want to try and do, because what your opponent is going to be doing is he's going to be massing up the ghouls in his base. As he is done, he's going to start to tech, and then he probably is going to start creeping with his ghouls. Now, if you're dancing around with the Death Knight, like in this case, he's going to bring the ghouls to his Death Knight, and you'll have a little skirmish. And that's what you're going to see here. And I would recommend, unless you have, superior micro to your opponent, I wouldn't fight these little battles. The Death Coil makes it really hard against a decent player to get any ghoul kills. And you're going to see here, they're going to try and focus on that one ghoul, but he's able to save that. He won't be able to save the next one, but you just traded a water elemental for a ghoul. So really the advantage goes to the undead player in that scenario. So at this point, he doesn't have any water elementals left, and he doesn't have enough mana to summon anymore, so he is going to run away, and that's a smart move. Get back to your base. He is going to lose another footman here, because Saturn's going to do a nice job and surround that footman, even though Shobu knew that's what he was trying to do and really went out of his way to try and avoid that. He comes back here to try and maybe, hey, if you're going to get a footman, maybe I can at least get a ghoul, but he gets there too late, and so it doesn't work out for him. So he's going to have to run back into his base, and you can see he's got a pretty good base build here, so he'll be able to get his units back safely. As you see, he is able to save that one footman. And you're going to notice that he has begun the process of building some rifles. And he's getting his Mountain King out. The undead player is going to now try to creep with his ghouls in one location while still harassing the creeping of the human player. As you see, the Death Knight just hit level 2. The Archmage has not quite hit level 2 yet. So maybe just a slight advantage to the undead player at this stage of the game. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, so I apologize if my voice sounds a little screwy tonight. But anyhow, the human player is going to be able to creep this spot out here, and he's going to build another rifleman. And, I guess I've heard people go back and forth whether or not you should get rifles against ghouls. The focus firing ability of the rifleman really makes a huge difference. Yes, the damage type and the armor types are not in your favor. That is true. However, you can focus fire because you have ranged units while the ghouls are melee units. Once the Mountain King pops out, everything changes, and the undead player says, okay, time for me to back off. Because really with the Mountain King there, the Stormbolt is going to make these ghouls easy pickings. And so this time he comes in, and just as he was about to try and coil that Knoll, if I'm not mistaken, it looked like the Mountain King used his second Stormbolt there and beat the Death Knight to the punch to get the experience. So there's a little bit of how the creeping dance goes, and basically here's what you want to do as a human player. Again, this is not the only way to do it. I think this is a good way to approach it. I think it's a fairly safe and conservative way to play the game. Your Mountain King comes out pretty much right away. You want to expand. So now you got about 3 riflemen and some footies. You're going to bring your militia in here. You got water elementals, your heroes. You're going to creep this thing out as quickly as you can. And you're going to notice the Mountain King, when he first popped out, he picked up a scroll of regeneration. That's a smart move. Don't just rally your altar to your hero when your Mountain King is popping out for the first time, because inevitably what you really want to do when he pops out is pick up an item or two, because either your army's out creeping, and that way you don't have to go back to your base to pick up a regeneration scroll. You've already got it on you. Or you're going to pick up some ivory towers to more quickly get a well-defended expo up. So in this case, he's got his regeneration scroll, and he's going to be able to heal up right after that battle. Now, if you're paying attention in that battle, you'll notice the undead player knew exactly what the human player was going to try. He knew the human player is going to attempt an expansion here. I am going to go right after him and try and prevent him from getting one. But there really wasn't much he could do. And in fact, the undead player lost 3 ghouls in that exchange. That's a pretty significant loss. Now, at this point, the undead player really not doing that bad of a job. I mean, yeah, at this point, I think you'd say the advantage is to the human in this game after losing those 3 ghouls there. But he knows the human player wants to creep, and so what does he do? He says, I'm going to go into your base so that you can't creep. Goes in, starts ravaging some peasants, and forces the human to TP in to defend his base, and then he just TPs out because he knows that his Lich will die quickly to that bolt focus fire if he's not careful. So in the meantime, he's got one lonely ghoul over here harassing this expansion, but because he lost those 3 ghouls earlier, he's really not able to do much damage there, and so the human now has an expansion, and that will change again the dynamics of the game. It gives the human a tremendous amount of flexibility, and you'll see how that plays out, not only in this game but the next. So here you just want to get your Mountain King to level 3. That's really critical. I think against ghouls, really you can probably make an argument either way, but I like to get Thunderclap up to level 2, and I'm pretty certain that is what Shobu does in this game. Because if the guy is going to have, a critical mass of ghouls, your level 2 Thunderclap is really a pretty impressive area of effect spell. And just a couple of thoughts on that real quick. It does 100 damage, which is the same amount as a level 1 Stormbolt. And if you think about that, I mean, you're like bolting multiple units simultaneously, almost. Granted, it doesn't do the same kind of stun effect that the bolt does, but it still slows those units down, which is a huge deal because part of the reason those ghouls are so darn pesky is because they're so fast. So when you can slow down a whole bunch of them, again, advantage to the human player. So there he did a nice job of kind of keeping that one lonely rifleman out in the pathway there where the undead player would have to travel through in order to get to his expansion. So he saw that coming and he was able to kind of head that off at the pass. And again, at this stage of the game, not much that the undead player can do to stop the human. Typically, the undead player isn't going to build a whole lot at Tier 2. You're going to get those slaughterhouses up, you're going to get a couple of obsidian statues out, and really it's not until Tier 3 that you can begin to build all of the undead's lovely Tier 3 atrocities, which would be the destroyers and the abominations. And those are the units that we as human players love to hate, particularly the destroyers, I think. But anyway, that was the window of opportunity for the human player, and that is typically the window of opportunity, unless you've really screwed up early in the game, right when your Mountain King comes out, early on in Tier 2, that's when you have a bit of an advantage, and you've got that window of opportunity to get up an expo, get it reasonably well defended, depending again on how comfortable you are with having just that one arcane tower. You might throw up 2 or 3 more towers there. Granted, that's going to mean fewer riflemen. But hey, let's go to 1/2 speed on my mark in 3, 2, 1, 1/2 speed. We'll just take a look at the micro here. You're going to see the thunderclap going off, and you're going to see it affects several of the ghouls. He also is able to use that Staff of Silence to simultaneously hit 2 of the Undead's 3 heroes, which is nice. Again, that just slows them down. when he's trying to nuke your guys. And you can see the ghouls are going to go after